Let's dive right in. I think most of these guys need no introduction, but I'll do it anyways. To my left is Sam Calagione, the co-founder and CEO of Dogfish Head. To his left is Matt Fraser, the president and COO of CANarchy Craft Brewery Collective. And all the way down there on the end is Donn Bichsel, the chief commercial officer from Revolution Brewing in Chicago.
Made that title up.
Fancy.
So this is sort of a state of the industry as we, approach the end of the year here. Just wanted to get your thoughts on where everything is headed. And I'll start with Sam. I was fortunate enough to be in Baltimore with you earlier this week at your distributor summit, and the theme of that event was navigating the noise, and I think that's a kind of a great place to start for today's discussion. So I guess first and foremost, what does navigating the noise mean to you?
Well, I mean, there's, we got to realize it is probably the most competitive moment in our industry that anyone in our room has lived through, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. And there's noise in the sense of 7,000 brand voices trying to be differentiated through the other 6,999. But that's why we all get up and go to work every day, is to try and build something really special and distinct and be inspired by the other breweries that are around us. But I do think it's a really pivotal moment where it's a lot harder to be a brewery, to get from a local, maybe single state taproom oriented brewery to get up to that list of 100 biggest breweries. And God bless, most breweries don't give a shit about trying to do that journey. But I do think the marketplace is a lot more difficult, because you look at that lower jaw, sort of the jaws of death, smiling jaws of death analogies, all the awesome little tasting rooms, and then that top is like the top 20, 30 craft breweries on that upper jaw. A lot of them are the brands that are, considered craft are controlled by really big conglomerates and have very different access to market challenges than the indie guys on that top jaw, and it makes it really hard. So it's very hard if you don't resource up with distributors to be a brewery that's in a bunch of states, because distributors' expectations is that you're going to come correct with marketing and sales plans of the scale of some of those international conglomerates, and that's not so easy.
Yeah, we were talking last night, Don, and you had mentioned that you've heard the word noise from your distributor partners a lot as well. When you hear it from them, what do they mean by noise?
The thing that we've been dealing with the most, and I've been a little fired up over this over the last couple of days, is I've heard it twice. I mean, I heard it from one of my distributor partners that they didn't want to carry one of my most profitable brands because it was just noise. And then I heard from another one of my partners that they didn't want to sell as much of my seasonal because it was noise. And noise to them at this point in time really means it's SKU rationalization is what's really happening. And so when I hear the word noise, I agree with you, Sam. There's so much that's going on out there in the three-tiered system as a whole. But noise, what I hear about primarily, is coming from the distributors. They think that the only thing at this point in time that we should be focusing on is our flagships. And I hate to use that word. We never use that word. But they really want to focus just on our top 2 or 3 SKUs. And as we try to find our way back into the top 10 within their houses, it's hard because our brand as a whole becomes noise to them.
Yeah. Matt, how are you guys at CANarchy with all of your various breweries navigating that noise? And maybe you can touch on just how competitive the space has become now that we're approaching 7,000 breweries in the United States, and kind of, why you guys are taking the approach that you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really about maintaining the share of mind of your distributor, and that's getting harder and harder every day. Every day there's new breweries opening, and now that we have 6,999 other breweries, how do you maintain and keep share of mind in your distributor? And what we like about having a collective is we can go to all 215 ABPs, which are coming up in the next 30, 60, 90 days, and in our top 10 ABPs with our top 10 biggest distributors, we're local in those markets. And by being able to go into an ABP and having a local brand, you really get the halo effect with the hero brands. And so if that ABP happens to be in Denver with CDC, who is our main distributor here in Colorado, or in the Denver area, with the Oscar Blues brand, you really get the halo effect when you're talking about Cigar City. It's not working. Did anyone hear anything I just said?
All right, Matt, take it from the top.
Really?
You want me to re-ask the question?
Could you hear? Oh, okay.
That sounds like a game show out there. I'm ready to play some Plinko or something.
I feel like we could do it.
In conclusion,
I just want to hear him say the word share of mind just one more time.
share of mind.
How hard do you guys work?
Noise.
How hard do you guys work to get your brands in the same house in a market? Is that a massive priority when you think of brands joining your portfolio?
It is. And if you look at the partnerships that we've made, and I'll talk about the two most recent partnerships. So Three Weavers, Lynn Weaver, who's here, and then Deep Ellum, John Reardon. I'm not sure if I saw John, but if you think of those two brands, Three Weavers is based in Inglewood, California, and one state, one distributor. It's Stone, and the Oscar Blues and the Cigar City brand is with the Stone House. And then Deep Ellum, based in Dallas, Texas, 90% of their beer is sold within a 20-mile radius. They're in the Benny Keith House, which is where Oscar Blues and Cigar City are. And so it's really about being able to align the network. And I'd say we're probably 90 to 95% aligned. A year ago, it was probably closer to 85%, and we're continuing to make some strides in aligning the network, but it's absolutely important that we are aligned.
Yeah. Now, Donn, for you guys at Revolution, Matt was talking about share of mind. How much more difficult is it today for a regional brand of your size to not only get that share of mind, but expand into, markets that are dominated by local players now?
Yeah, we don't go anywhere anymore. I mean, we opened up around us last year, but unless you get to the point where you've got a chain that's coming calling, or you've got a big partner that really, really needs you, at this point in time, it's all about kind of taking care of our backyard, making sure that we're taking care of the people that got us to where we are today. And we don't look outwardly too much anymore. I mean, and we're not as cute as we used to be. I mean,
Come on, you're pretty cute.
You are.
So I mean,
Wait, were you ever cute, Donn?
I was. Oh. I was the cutest I'd ever been about 3 years ago, and now.
Well, and there's just not enough shelf space for 7,000 national breweries. I mean, even as on-premise accounts. I mean, this on-premise account 5 years ago might have had 2 tap handles, and now it has 4. But if you look at most on-premise accounts, they've doubled the number of tap handles, but the shelf space has increased from 10 to 30 feet, but it's not going to go from 30 feet to 200. And so there's not enough room for 7,000 national breweries, so you really need to dominate your backyard.
Yeah, and the hardest thing as well is the fact that, you've got the big national brands, not within craft, but even some of the big craft guys that are starting to push back. I mean, the amount of space that Corona is grabbing back, the amount of space that AB is grabbing back. It had gotten to the point that I don't want to say that craft was over-indexed, but when you start looking at data and you start looking at turns, these big national players are starting to move back to imports and move back to domestics, and it really is lessening the amount of space that's really out there.
Yeah, and you talked about doubling the amount of tap handles, Matt, or expanding the shelf space, but you can do that. But if there aren't the consumers, out there to drink up that volume, it's not really accomplishing anything, right? So where do you go from there? Even if you double shelf space or you double tap handles, how do you begin to capture more market share as a smaller brewer? And I'll start with Sam.
Yeah, you better have really well-differentiated beers that outpunch their weight in velocity. Hopefully both velocity and revenue per CE. That'd be the ideal equation if you can do both of those things. And I honestly don't blame the distributors for that SKU rationalization. Not only am I hearing a lot of distributors saying, okay, Dogfish, you want to introduce X amount of brands next year, well, then which of that same amount do you want to take out of your portfolio? And I'd rather we choose so that we can put strategy and resources behind our priorities than have them chosen for us by letting them lag in some distributor's house. I don't blame them for putting that gauntlet down. Similarly, I don't blame them for not increasing their books. But what is scary is you see more of them stratifying their books towards hyper-local and national brands. So on that jaws of death analogy, I think it's going to be a lot harder in the next 5 years to go from that lower jaw and be a tasting room-oriented local brewery to get onto a top 100, if that's the journey you're on, than it was for Stone and Bell's and Dogfish when we were all coming up together, mostly because of the competitive realities and the distributors' needs to manage so many SKUs.
Yeah, and you talked about the growth of local and just how important the tap room has become. Where do you guys see that direct sales piece of the business going in future years as more and more consumers, shift where they actually buy their products? It's over a tap room bar, it's cases out the front door, and that puts pressure on all of your breweries who are still trying to exist in sort of the traditional three-tier way, and I got to imagine it's having a profound impact on just the category dynamics. So maybe you all could kind of touch on how direct sales are impacting the traditional routes to market.
You look at out there about 3 or 4 years ago, I used the number 15%, and I remember that people thought I was out of my mind. But I really believe that it's at least 15% of all beer that's being sold in this country is being sold direct through tap rooms. I mean, it's gotten to the point that that is a major part of the business, and it definitely affects it. It affects the way that the distributors go to market. It affects the way that retailers look at you. I think that that's going to do nothing but increase. I mean, we've seen it in Chicago. The traditional mom-and-pop bars aren't making it anymore. They don't have the experience that the consumer is looking for, and the consumer is really looking for that direct-to-them experience, and those tap rooms are going to continue to grow, and they're going to continue to thrive. I mean, I think the number 7,000 is just the beginning. I think we're going to see 10,000 and 12,000. I think the ability to be able to make your own product and sell it direct and tell that story is one that the consumer really wants to latch onto.
And you're dealing with a lot of backlash from retailers in the Chicago market, correct?
Yes and no. We do an awful lot of hard work with our retailers and with our bars. Like anytime we do a release party at our brewery or at our brew pub, we do something out in the market first. We have pre-release parties out in the market with our retailers because we want to make sure that they understand that our focus is first and foremost with them, and the experience that we give to our consumers is different. But we want to make sure that we always are first and foremost for our retailers, and then we do our own things that are slightly different at our own establishments.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's every bit of 15%. I mean, if you look at how many direct-to-consumer breweries are within a 2-mile radius of where we're sitting right now, my guess is it's probably 30 or 40 different establishments that you can walk into and get a beer. And it's obviously going to have an impact on on-premise accounts and then an impact on distributors. And if it has an impact on distributors, that's trickling down to all the suppliers, and it's hitting the three of us that are sitting up here today.
So how does that fit with the CANarchy strategy? Do you guys continue to go even smaller with future acquisitions? Are you still looking to acquire breweries? Like, how does the continued evolution of the space shape the direction that you guys go?
So it's really about being as deep as you can in your home market. You need I've heard the word backyard now 3 or 4 times, and it's really about winning in your backyard. And so we'll constantly look for opportunities in different markets where we aren't local, and it gives us an opportunity to become local in that market.
Yeah. Sam, are you guys seeing much of the impact of direct sales on your business? And if so, what's it look like for Dogfish?
Yeah, certainly, but we'd be hypocrites if we were frustrated in a market like Colorado because the local Colorado, direct-to-consumer breweries are affecting our sales because we have 2 local brew pubs in coastal Delaware. And I think it's awesome that breweries are allowed to start with that model. But I do think if you grow into a world where you sell, the vast majority of your beer through out-of-state distributors, I think you do have a obligation to the 3-tier system to make sure that that is your main focus versus opening a shit ton of tap rooms in different geographies that are competing with your further away distributors. So we have very different definitions of success. In our Mid-Atlantic, we're up double digits, and you damn well better be in your backyard. In this competitive moment, we all have seen a few brands that probably can come to mind as cautionary tales that have had struggles in the last few years, and you can look, and usually they're the ones, the sizable brands that have had struggles are the ones that did not prioritize being strong in their backyard, whereas we're doing great with breakthrough in a bunch of markets, and we're on the cusp because of our leadership team here of being up a few points this year, and that's a definition of success for a market this far away.
Yeah, how will breweries define success moving forward? Success a couple years ago was 18, 20, 30% year-over-year growth, and with national trends, skewing to 5% nationally, I mean, certainly there's higher double-digit growth in the long tail for a lot of brands, but there's a lot of cases of breweries closing up as well. I mean, we're going to see the number of brewery closures this year tick up to close to 300 at the same time as 1,000 or so will open. So the gap is shrinking between opening and closings. So how will people define success moving forward?
I'll just say this: the scariest reality metric is overall beer is probably growing about 2%, and we have in the last rolling 12 months 20% more breweries than we did. So 20 more percent brand new breweries trying to get part of that 2% growth. That's the reality. Yeah.
You're just slicing the pie even further.
Yeah, it's just not even possible. I mean, I think I've been using the word, flat is the new up. I mean, I look at success. If we are still growing in our backyard with a 98 or 99 ACV out in the marketplace, so we can't just pipeline fill anymore. If we are growing in our backyard, then we are winning. We are 100% winning. We are up 8% at home in Illinois, and I'm getting my ass handed to me in some other markets, and I feel great about it. I feel fantastic about it.
and we're in a similar situation. I mean, we've got 10 home markets, so if we can win in our 10 home markets, we're doing all right. And if you can be flat in the 40 other markets, it's a win.
I think I was able to use the word backyard twice in that last.
Share of mind.
Noise.
Yeah, who's taking notes? These are the buzzwords to write down.
Drinking.
Yeah, every time backyard or share of mind, everybody takes a drink.
Backyard share of mind. Backyard share of mind.
I mean, all joking aside, I mean, the category is, being completely revolutionized again and again every single year. And Donn, you sort of pointed to this notion that, we're going to have 7,000 breweries this year, and you think it could grow to 10 or 12,000 over the next however many years, however long that takes. Most of those companies are going to be taproom focused, local. They're going to focus on their backyard.
To get share of mind.
To get share of mind. If that does happen, that's going to seriously disrupt the way that everybody in the space operates, from wholesalers to retailers to companies the size of Dogfish to enterprises like CANarchy. How are you guys preparing for that? Or have you built models that are setting you guys up for that possible reality?
Well, I mean, one example from our perspective at Dogfish is why we're leaning so hard into the Brewers Association's independent seal. It's a pretty scary fact that the last time we as an industry lived through a shakeout, in the late 90s, if you looked at IRI data from then, the best-selling beer styles were amber, pale, lager, and seasonal. And really, the moment of that late 90s shakeout is when we, the Indie Craft Breweries America, made the IPA the super galvanizing and exciting style that it is. And that style really became a catalyst for growing us collectively through that shakeout. And you look at this moment now, the IRI defined top 3 IPAs come from Heineken, a brewery that's affiliated with San Miguel, and Anheuser-Busch InBev with Elysian. Great beers, great people work there, but it's going to be pretty scary if indie IPAs don't stay relevant in the top 50 world. Because what could happen, a nightmare scenario, is indie craft beer becomes something that's sold in tap rooms outside the 3-tier system, where they're commanding $15 for a 4-pack of hazy IPA. And, you know, big brewery, IRI, you know, acquired brands is what's sold through the 3-tier system, commanding $15 a 15-pack. And that I think is a dangerous model for a lot of folks on all 3 tiers.
Yeah.
I also don't think that we're going to see 10,000 breweries over the next few years. Sorry, Don. If there's 7,000 now, and there's
He's wrong.
And there's 2,000 in planning. I mean, 2 years ago when people started planning breweries to open, we were seeing craft growth rates of in the teens, and now that the craft growth rates have slowed, I think the number of breweries in planning will start to head south. And with the number of closings this year approaching 300, and I think we'll continue seeing a shakeout. And eventually we're going to get to a point where the number of openings is equal to the number of closings, which I think will likely happen in the next 2 or 3 years, preventing us to get to the 10,000.
Yeah, I mean, those lines have to cross at some point, right?
Right,
or at least meet.
And we're seeing the shakeout, and it's starting with our distributors who have been collecting brands over the last 10 or 15 years. And for the first time in 2018, we've noticed that our distributors are actually cutting down on the brands that they have. And when they start cutting down, you're going to see some of those breweries closing their doors.
Yeah, we've started to see more and more of our distributors that are just flat out releasing brands. So they're not even, I mean, for a long time, that collection of brands was very, very profitable for our distributors and sometimes for some of the breweries themselves. But the amount of breweries that are being let go of distributors, I mean, it's a lack of access to market. I mean, that's what really it is. And the reason I believe that there'll be more and more of these breweries that open is because I think that they're going to have to hunker down and sell all of their stuff in their backyard. But I really do think that the one thing that I see is that if we're not consistently and constantly innovating as a brewery and changing and keeping up with trends and styles, and it sucks to be chasing them all the time, but if we don't continue to do that as the leaders in the top 50 breweries, we won't survive. I mean, some of us will slip back and be in the hundreds if we don't continually innovate, because styles just don't last as long as they used to.
Is the Revolution brand at risk of being dropped in any of your markets that are outside of Illinois?
No,
do you guys ever worry about that?
No, great question. Not currently, but I mean, all transparency, we've had the conversations, you know, are we still a fit? You know, are we still, you know, of top share of mind within your household? I mean, we have those conversations all the time, even at some of our top distributors.
And how do those conversations go?
Not well, ever. I mean, I don't ever want to go through a divorce, and going through divorces in business really, really sucks. And sometimes it's the right move, and you know, sometimes, you know, you just kind of hold on and find out a way to love each other again.
And if you're not getting the focus from your distributor in a market that's outside your home, it's impossible to survive.
We have markets that are you know, more than 400 miles from our backyard, and when you go in and you talk to the distributor, and then they just pull it up and they say, okay, yeah, you contribute, you know, 40% more profits per case than the average craft brewery, but you are 1% of our distributorship's revenue.
Right.
I'm sorry, we're already over-indexing resources towards you to the degree that we can.
Well, it gets hard. I mean, in Manhattan, I mean, a great example is we're with Manhattan Beer, and they do a great job for us, and we scan well in the marketplace, and we've got a great partner in Dwayne Reed and Walgreens that takes really good care of us, but we are 0.001% of their business. So when I come in asking for favors, they look at me and they're going, that's real cute, Don. That's real cute. You know, stay in your lanes, okay? Dwayne Reed, you get Dwayne Reed.
So what's the solution?
There isn't one, because they're right. I mean, the hard thing for us to face is to have those open and honest conversations and admit that, you know what, this is how much focus we really do deserve, and until we do something transformational, i.e. product, pack size, more people in the market, great marketing programs, you have to agree with them at some point in time, because they are right. It doesn't feel good, but you know, it's just the realities of the business the way it is today.
And that's the reason that I think we'll see continued consolidation in the industry, because it is impossible to get that distributor to focus on you when you are 0.01%. But we go into a market and you partner with a local brand, and you go.
You're good.
And you go from 0.01% to 3% by partnering with the local brand, and now in that backyard, you get share of mind.
Yeah. Everybody drink. Now, Sam, one of the ways that Dogfish is, I guess, potentially trying to troubleshoot or problem solve this whole thing is by prominently displaying the independent seal on your one of your flagship products. And you believe that that's going to help your brand differentiate itself and maybe move the needle a little bit. So maybe talk to me about the thought process behind making that decision to display the independent seal so prominently. And for those that maybe haven't seen what it looks like, it's, I mean, you do a better job of describing it, but I mean, it's about the width of an actual bottle on the six-pack carrier and the full length of the six-pack board. So why are you guys leaning so heavily on that, and what do you think it's going to do for the brand?
I mean, it's, you know, we've been proud to be members of the Brewers Association for 20 years, and I was on the board as we developed that definition. And I think that definition has helped us keep a lot of integrity and opportunity for smaller breweries. And I do worry that there's a potential for that, what we've built, to be a little bit disintegrated. And for us, that seal's not ownable. It's owned by any brewery that fits into the definition of a voting member of the BA. But we thought this moment when the BA is focusing their resources now more finally on consumer-facing, amplifying the dialogue about why you should care about indie, is the right time for us to step up and say we want to help amplify this dialogue. We don't own that, but we believe in it, so that's why we're doing it.
Okay. And do you guys feel similarly about the indie seal and its potential to have an impact on consumer purchasing decisions?
So we do, and so we haven't adopted the seal yet. And the main reason that we haven't adopted the seal is if you look at the seal, it's a bottle, and the name of our company is CANarchy. And we always thought it was funny to put a bottle on a can, but that's somewhat of a stubborn take on our part, and it's something that we've been talking about internally for probably 2 years. But we're getting close to the point where we're going to start putting on secondary packaging for all the breweries, and we'd like to continue the conversation with the Brewers Association to potentially look at an alternate logo that has a can within a bottle, but means the same thing.
Don, something tells me that you're going to be the on the other side of this debate.
Yeah, the little voice in my head is going, "Don't get in trouble. Don't get in trouble. Don't get in trouble." Stay friends with Sam. Stay friends with Sam. Yeah, stick to your backyard. I have many issues with it. But at the end of the day, it really isn't my choice. It's Josh's choice, the owner of our company. And Josh and I have talked about this an awful lot. I don't agree with the move a lot because of the fact that it is a bottle. I don't think it fits us because we moved aggressively out of bottling to just be a can brewery. I think I would welcome some of the things that we talked about last night if there was an incorporation of a can. I just want to make sure that the message is being sent out there in the right way. I don't want any consumer to feel like because they have a gateway product that they're drinking to get to us, that they are not worthy of beer. I get a little afraid of that sometimes. I don't want us to make anybody feel like drinking beer or coming into our category is the wrong thing to do. But I welcome watching it as it evolves, and I welcome watching what the BA is doing. And I think that if there is a change in the label, I think that we could probably hop on board at some point in time as well. I mean, one of our core values, and I forgot to say this, one of our core values for Revolution is to stay independent and brew beer only in Chicago. I mean, that's our core value. And so, I mean, at some point in time, we will be on board.
Yeah.
Did I get myself in trouble, Sam?
So we've talked a lot about the beer category specifically and craft and where things are headed and all the noise, as we started with. Part of that noise is outside of the category. Part of it is wine and spirits, where we've seen a lot of consumers kind of shift their drinking and go into those categories. I think the sort of stat that we've reported and that others have reported is that beer now controls less than 50% of the market share of total beverage alcohol. and 2 decades ago it was 62% or something thereabouts. So consumers are gravitating towards wine and spirits, and then we're here in Colorado. There's also this emerging cannabis industry, and I think the sort of jury is still out on whether or not cannabis sales are going to positively or negatively impact alcohol sales. Is cannabis a complement product or is it a substitution product? So I wanted to get your thoughts on what impact you see the cannabis industry having on beer, and also, what breweries can do to maintain some of their customers or bring customers back that have gravitated towards wine and spirits. I'll start with Sam.
I think craft beer and cannabis are pretty good buddies with each other. I think they get along pretty well. I don't know. But I'm definitely concerned, and we own a small distillery, and we're proud of that, and that's up 70%. It's in our backyard. We only distribute in 3 states with our spirits, but we love that little business. But right in our vision statement for Dogfish, we call ourselves a beer-centric company, and our intention is always to have beer be the economic engine. We do hotels and restaurants, merchandise, spirits, other stuff, but beer is the economic engine, and I feel Dogfish lives and dies by the health of our core business. I'm glad to see the different leadership entities of the beer world getting together, Bob Pease meeting with Craig Purser and the folks from the Beer Institute to try and say, hey guys, we're losing share now for a bunch of years. We need to fight back. We need to do something. And I think that's one way craft brewers and big brewers need to get alignment and work together. It is a little disconcerting, though, that I think the U.S. represents 71% of the global profit pool for craft beer and a disproportionate amount of just global profit pool for beer. And so the world's biggest breweries that are losing share to wine and spirits are at that same moment enjoying their largest profitability per case.
Right.
And yet the reinvesting of those profits back into America's beer vibrancy is not really happening. To some extent, those profits are harvested out of our country to maximize, quarterly shareholder value, not to help the beer industry in America. And I think we collectively have to work on that.
Well, and in some cases, those profits are also being invested in the cannabis industry itself.
To Sam's point, I've always been a fan of what cannabis could do for craft beer, because if you think of it, if you're high, are you more likely to drink 2 Dale's Pale Ales or 9 Bud Lights? And so I've always thought that it would complement the entire craft market.
That was a really good plug there. That was well done. Somebody told me, because I would never enter one of those places, that there was a sign up that said that you could get high for only $1, and I love that, because now I think to myself that at beer you can get a buzz for $2. So it's one of those things that unfortunately the consumer now has access, or fortunately, to being able to get their high on for very inexpensive. It's very inexpensive to get your buzz on for $1. So I think it really is going to affect us. I think we're going to see more and more consumers gravitating over to not drinking as much beer or drinking less beer and getting their high on in different ways.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, in Colorado here, you guys obviously have a heavy presence with Oscar Blues. What has been your experience selling in a legal cannabis market like Colorado, and have you seen it have any impact on the business?
If you look at the trends of just the Oscar Blues portfolio, our best performing state, trend-wise, is Colorado. So I think it proves the point that Dale's might even actually cure cottonmouth.
Yeah, drop the mic. It doesn't work anyways, right? So, I guess a final question on the sort of cannabis issue is, we kind of touched on it. We have seen companies invest in the space, alcohol companies. We've seen Constellation invest in Canopy Growth Corporation. We've seen Molson Coors invest, and it's all happening north of the border, in a company called Hexo. Lagunitas is sort of the one outlier that is, doing a product with a California-based company called Hi-Fi Hops. And then, we actually even have wholesalers like Breakthrough getting into the space as well. Is this an area that we might see any of you guys explore in the future?
You know, not professionally.
I don't know how I can even comment after that.
Well, you can try.
I mean, we're always going to look at opportunities, and we've had meetings with a lot of cannabis manufacturers, but if the right opportunity comes along, we'll look at it.
Yeah, I can guarantee you that our brewers would absolutely love us to play in that space. I don't see us doing it. I mean, not anytime soon. I mean, I think that in Illinois right now, it's not like it is here in Colorado. I think that if it was an open market in Illinois, we would probably look at it a little bit differently. But as of right now, we haven't even experimented with any kind of marijuana infused or any talks about it.
So Matt, it seems like you guys are probably the closest of the three that's sort of watching it and examining it. CANarchy, cannabis, that could possibly fit with just your branding, right?
That's a good one.
But in the middle of those two words is the word narc. Very careful. Be very careful.
All right.
Was that prepared? Wow.
Sam, you officially win. All right. We got a few minutes to ask a few sort of odds and ends. I mean, this has been pretty great so far. We're going to be talking a little bit about innovation on the next panel, and I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on how each of you approach innovation and avoid sort of the copycatting or cloning that we see a lot of in this space, as there are almost 7,000 breweries. It's tough to carve out white space, as you say, Sam. So how do each of you guys approach innovation, and how do you capitalize on emerging trends but still stay true to sort of your brand ethos?
I mean, for us, when I wrote a book called Brewing Up a Business, and I get a lot of emails of folks saying, hey, read your book, thinking about getting in the business, do you have any advice? And I always say, there's always room for another awesome brewery in every decent-sized town in America, even at this competitive moment, but you better come correct with world-class quality, consistency, and being well-differentiated. So that innovation one certainly touches on being well-differentiated. Being well-differentiated is what allows us as small producers to charge a premium for our product. But Miles Davis was once asked, how did you find such a unique creative voice in music? And he said, don't play what's there, play what's not there. But there's so many people playing a cacophony of creative, sounds out there. It's harder to find where people aren't playing. But that's awesome, because it makes you get better as brewers to find that white space in a more noisy world. So I love that opportunity. And at our brewery, we have this exploration of goodness kind of internal mandate that we don't do the fast follower model, that we don't copy. We work really hard to find a unique way in our products, and that's kind of our philosophy on it.
Similar to the Miles Davis analogy, we kind of play where the puck is and then make sure you have an idea of where the puck is going. And if you have 5 or 6 bodies on where you think the puck is going, hopefully 2 or 3 of those bodies are in the right place.
So where's the puck going?
We've got 5 or 6 different things in the works right now where we think it's going, and like I said, hopefully 2 or 3 of them are in the right place.
All right.
I don't feel like I learned anything from that answer.
I don't think we're gonna learn anything if I ask anything more.
Strategic planning time of year for us brewers.
That was such a great dance. Sam and I talked about it last night, the fact that, he's going to get a cease and desist from us because we have been talking about an electrolyte beer. And I can show the emails when we started talking about it first.
The retroactive.
Retroactive cease and desist. It's really hard. I mean, I definitely stole an awful lot when I joined Josh and Krista's company from the Dogfish model about being very well differentiated in our portfolio. We are constantly innovating. We're constantly doing different things. The amount of beers that come out of our brew pub and are served at our tap room, and that's the real benefit of that, is that we have the ability to really try things out there, and we try not to chase trends. I mean, yes, we make a kettle sour now, but that was in the works for 3 years. It just took us a while to get it there. Will we do a hazy beer? My brewers would probably lynch me before they do a hazy beer. I mean, I tried to get them to make a fruit IPA, and they called it under protest. So it sold very well, by the way. But you know, you have to innovate or die. I mean, you have to be constantly innovating, or you will die.
Yeah. This question is specifically for Sam and Matt. You know, there's been a lot of money that's flowed into the space over the last couple of years, and you know, we've seen it from large strategics, as you know, we've already discussed, as well as some of the private equity players, and both of your companies are backed by private equity firms. When you talk to your investment partners about how the category is evolving, and they read headlines like the ones we write about category slowdowns and slowing growth and brewery closures and, you know, all the sort of gray skies that are out there, how do you, I guess, you know, allay any of their concerns that this slowing growth is going to be a drag on their investment in your companies? And I guess more broadly, like, what impact has the infusion of all this capital into the space had in the sort of overall development of where craft is headed?
Sure. So when I look at our shareholder base, it's a collection of a bunch of founders. So it's the founders of all 7 breweries that are in the collective, and then the founder of Reebok's family. So it's not traditional private equity that's looking to flip a business in 3 to 5 years. The Fireman family has been in the craft beer space since 2012. So we're already 6 years into the investment, and it's a long-term horizon. The vast majority of the money is the founders' money, and then the Reebok family money, and they've been through the sneaker wars in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and so as we're entering a time where there's a lot of noise in this space, it's nice to have a partner that's seen it in a similar consumer products industry.
There's other investors, though, other than the Fireman family, correct?
We have some debt lenders that are in there as well, yes.
Gotcha. And do they express concerns about where things are going, and what are those conversations like?
You know, so lenders don't operate the business. It's the founders and the management team, and so that's not a conversation that we have on a day-to-day basis with the lenders.
Gotcha. And how about for L&K and Dogfish?
And so for us, Mariah and I have always had minority investors in Dogfish. From her dad and my dad, have had, to my orthodontist, invested early on. But Mariah and I have always controlled over 80% of Dogfish, and right now we control 85%. But we have L&K in because 2 years ago we saw this competitive moment coming, and that list of top 50 craft breweries that looked like they had, you know, beards and were smoking joints. They also were, some of them were carrying briefcases and wearing suits, and I was like, oh shit, these people don't look like us anymore. We better get some sage business advice. So, you know, L&K is sort of like this little tiny 15% super sage Yoda that just sits on the side and can give us advice. The folks there help navigate moments with Calvin Klein, Nyman Ranch, Levi's in similarly competitive moments, but probably what's a little different is ours is always the expectation was that they'd come in, teach us a bunch of shit, and much like with my orthodontist, after a bunch of years, we would buy them out, and we're actually getting close to that moment, and that's the intention, is that we're not going to stay with L&K. We're learning a shit ton from them in this competitive moment, but you know, it's serving a great purpose at this time. I'll say that.
How close?
Well, I think we have to, the earliest moment either of us can say, yep, we got everything we wanted out of this, we can transition, is fall of 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Final question for you guys, since I know everybody probably wants to refill their beers and move on to the next panel. You know, for all the brewers out there, maybe a show of hands, how many brewing companies are in the audience today? So a lot of brewers out there. Some advice that you guys would impart as we prepare to get into our next panel, some advice for helping some of the folks in the audience today navigate the noise as we've talked about.
Backyard, share of mind. Focus. You know, I mean, it's difficult out there right now, and my advice would be hire somebody that knows what the fuck they're doing. I mean, I think that's the most important thing that you can do. I think that that and investing in data, I think, is probably the two most important things as you try to grow up, is to try to figure out that you've got the right people that are meeting with the right retailers, with the right information, so that they can then convey your message out and get yourself out there either into the retail space or into the bars so that some consumer can actually buy you. But if you don't have that, you're really going to struggle, because navigating the distributors, you know, I mean, it's a business, everybody. You know, they're going to make their 25 to 30%. The retailers are going to make their 25 to 30%. You got to make sure you know what you're doing, or someone's going to eat your lunch.
Now to add to that, just listen. I mean, there's now 7,000. There's now 7,000 breweries out there. What I love about what CANarchy is doing is every decision that we've made, we've seen before in one of the other breweries. And if you can listen to each other and learn from past mistakes and avoid making those mistakes in the future, it can save yourself a bunch of time and a bunch of money.
And I just add that I don't think 2018 is going to be the worst year of the shakeout. I think 2019 and 2020 are even going to be harder. So, you know, unless you're on some awesome trajectory between 10,000 and 100,000 barrels in a big multi-state footprint, you know, this is probably a good moment to assess. Can you retreat and be more of a home state or backyard contiguous states around your home state brewery where you can sell more of your own beer to weather this storm? And if not, if you're all into a bigger distribution model, then you better invest heavily in true come-to-market marketing plans, sales teams, and investments. But if you don't want to spend your days talking about SKU proliferation and velocity and CEs, and you have the ability to go back to a tasting room brewery and close some states to do it, this is an awesome time to do it. And that's why we got in this business, to have fun. So figure out your definition of fun and go at it. Don't let it happen to you. Make it happen.
Yeah, some great advice. Listen, invest in good people, and keep it local. Thank you guys for sharing everything that you did today. I really appreciate it. Round of applause for them.
Good job, gents. It was fun.